Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.
And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 194, brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com. I think tonight we're going to move some of the housekeeping details that we like to talk about up front to the back of the show and get right into it. Because, you know, the last show was kind of like 31 thoughts for 31 teams. And there was this 32nd team in Philadelphia that we just didn't get to. We kind of went to with the rest of the panel. It's not the same. So we wanted Lyle Richardson from Spector's Hockey to come back and give us his thoughts about what's been an interesting offseason for our Philadelphia Flyers. But before we do that, let's introduce our panel tonight. Now, just to have you know that the great Dan Silver, and I think he's changing his name like Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I'm trying to get the confirmation on that. But he's up in Saratoga with the horses, and actually I'm sure one of them will win. And then, of course, we have Chef, who does claim work for Summit Adjusters, one of our sponsors, who has a flooded basement, I believe, so he will not be with us. But we have someone tonight who you know from the Flyers pod space. I think he's with right now Flyers Alley Pod, and they can be accessed on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Flyers Alley Pod 1. And you know him as Kyle Warner. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, really great to have you on. So we're going to get to the Flyers right now with Lyle Richardson. And Lyle, you are at spectorshockey.net. You write for The Guardian and PEI. You're also on the Bleacher Report and, of course, the Hockey News. Thanks for doing this again.
Always a pleasure, Isaiah. We just had to. It just didn't seem right the last show that I wound up having to leave early and not talk about the Flyers, which is the whole reason for the podcast in the first place. So yeah, I'm happy to be back to talk about the Flyers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we were kind of setting it up for you, talking about these teams, and we went through a lot of them, probably in some cases longer than I imagined. We got into prospects of teams out in way out in the sticks in Winnipeg. Oh, I like that third defenseman they have. But all of that aside,
it was very in depth though. It sounded good. You know,
it was comprehensive.
It was comprehensive. Absolutely.
You can never put a time limit on talking hockey when you get a bunch of guys who like hockey.
Unless you are the wife.
Yes. Yes. There's the time limit right there.
Happy wife, happy life. Anyway, so the Philadelphia Flyers, that we know just recently completed a quasi trade, a Frankenstein-style trade that involved Tony DeAngelo and brought them back a fifth-round draft pick and Massimo Rizzo, and we'll get into him later. But basically, gone from this year's squad coming up are Tony DeAngelo, JVR, Kevin Hayes, who they bought out, and of course the big trade of Ivan Provorov, which involved three teams, and the Flyers received draft picks, and of course Sean Walker, Cal Peterson in that deal. Plus they signed on the free agent market Garnet Hathaway, kind of a third or fourth line tough guy who can score a little bit, and Ryan Paling, who had played with a couple teams, including the Montreal Canadiens, who are your favorite team. He's a speedy defensive center with some size, not a lot of offense so far. They're giving him a shot with this young crew. So lay it on us. What do you think of the Flyers? They've obviously fully embraced the rebuild, so we're not looking at a 100-point season here.
No. And, I think all Flyers fans knew this was coming. I mean, Danny Briere, your new general manager, I mean, he said on day one, we are embracing the rebuild. and it's long overdue. It's long overdue. There can't be any more half measures here. But I mean, some of the moves I thought, I thought were pretty good. I mean, some of them depth moves, obviously bringing in Garnet Hathaway. Good that he wanted to come in as a free agent. That's always a good thing. You want a guy who wants to be there. And I think he'll work well with John Tortorella. In fact, I would not be surprised if some if not all of these moves were made with, Briere consulting with Tortorella on what type of guys that he would want to bring in. So, good moves that way. I mean, Ryan Poehling, as you said, he was once a highly touted Canadiens prospect. Didn't quite work out in Montreal. Didn't work out in Pittsburgh. Hopefully 3 times the charm for him. I like the kid. I've liked him since he was a Habs prospect. But he'll get an opportunity, and who knows, maybe he'll be one of those kids that blossoms under Tortorella's tough love. Some of the moves, first of all, that trading Provorov in that 3-team deal off to Columbus and getting back the returns that you mentioned, that was a nice, tidy piece of business. I think bringing in some additional depth that they can use, especially in goal, giving Cal Peterson another shot. Things didn't work out for him in Los Angeles. The Kevin Hayes thing, that one's kind of unfortunate, but the whole thing was to try and get as much of his salary off the books as possible. So off he goes to St. Louis, and you only get back a 6th round pick, but at least you lose half his salary. So, it's not quite as detrimental. Better to only retain half than to still have that full $7 million and have it handcuff you when you're trying to bring in other players to further bolster your roster. But overall, yeah, these are they're rebuilding moves. I think obviously, the big news that everybody was happy about, obviously, for the Flyers was having Michkov land in your lap. I believe 7th overall. So that bodes well for the future. From what I've seen from somebody posting clips up, I don't know who that is, but a certain someone posting clips up of what he's doing over in the KHL right now, young Michkov. So things are looking promising on that front as well. But it's year one, of a rebuild. Having gone through that sort of thing very recently here in Montreal, I mean, the Canadiens are still rebuilding, obviously, but now they're heading into year 3. So there's much more room for optimism moving forward there. For the Flyers, it's listen, you got a team with Tortorella. They're going to work their butts off. There aren't going to be any passengers from regardless of who they are on that squad. But I think expectations are going to be the fact that you're not going to be qualifying for the playoffs. Right now, it's just going to be more of an evaluation of what you've got in your roster. How well guys like Couturier and Atkinson, if they can come back healthy and help the roster that way. If it does, that will provide a boost. It'll certainly make them tougher to play against. And, how well some of the younger guys do. I mean, I mentioned Connect, and he's not really a younger guy. He's almost more of a veteran now, even though I believe he's only 25 or 26, but still.
Yeah, 26. Yeah.
Yeah. But you got these kids like Noah Cates and Frost and so on. So, there's some high hope there. It's not like you don't have anything, to look forward to in terms of potential. So it'll be an evaluation year. But, at least by the end of it, you'll have a better idea of where your team's heading, who's going to be sticking around, who could be moving out after this season, and maybe a more clearer path forward.
Sure. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
I think it's clearly evident the Flyers are in rebuild. I mean, we all are in full-on agreement. We're not going to have the most phenomenal season this year. I think that a lot of the moves were exactly that. I think for who was the guy we ended up sending over? Not
Kasha.
Was it? Was
You're
that
talking about in the Carolina
part of the
trade,
deal?
or?
Well, we sent over a player for the Rizzo deal, and we got a 5th back.
It was
But I think
Kasha.
that was-
Yeah, David Kasha.
Yeah, and that was all a backdoor deal for us buying out D'Angelo and them getting them for even less than half, which is it's a good sign, because we went from having a GM that was kind of incompetent at working around and making deals that everybody knew needed to be done, to a GM that's in his first year as being a GM, and he's already looking like a GM that is ready to actually take the reins and make some moves, which I appreciate. I did like the Provorov deal as well. I like Garnet Hathaway. I've always liked Garnet Hathaway. He's one of those prototypical Flyer guys that I think everybody will truly enjoy just watching him play. And he's, I said on Flyers Alley the other day, Garnet Hathaway gives you a little bit of Scotty Lawton syndrome. He's one of those guys that can play fourth line, can play third line. If we get an injury on the second line, he can slide up for limited minutes on the second line, which is always good to have versatile forwards that you get somebody struggling, you can move up and down in the lineup. I think that, yeah, this year's going to be a big time evaluation. I think that the Flyers are not going to make the playoffs, but I think overall, I think it'll be a better year than we might be expecting in terms of player development, which I think the Flyers are really spearheading in a direction of developing these guys better than just throwing them in and being like, all right, you guys failed, and then getting rid of them.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the one good thing I can say about this, again, as a fan of a rebuilding team and having gone through that first year, when you have lowered expectations, the stress is gone. You know, I mean, last year, I mean, I was following along what, you know, like I have other Flyers, friends who are Flyers fans. Heck, the guy who helps maintain my site is a diehard Flyers fan, for heaven's sake. But, to watch, I mean, it really sucks when you're suffering through what the Flyers went through last year. I mean, we went through the same thing with the Canadians before they finally said, okay, it's time to pull a pin and let's rebuild this. Without having that stress, I mean, you'd be able to actually kind of have a clearer vision of what you've got on your roster and who's going to pan out for you in the long run, who isn't, and what you've got in your system coming up. So, I mean, without having that stress of, are they going to make the playoffs? Oh, are they going to do that? Are they going to do that? You do tend to get a better beat on what's happening with your team.
Yeah, I think the Flyers are definitely in an interesting position, especially with kids like Tyson Forrester,
Yes.
Wade Allison. Or what Wade Allison are we going to get this year? Are we going to get the Wade Allison that came up at the end of, 2020, 2021? And we were all like, oh my God, Wade Allison's going to be amazing. And then are we going to get more Wade Allison from last year, where it really didn't click? Like it didn't come together for the kid. Like it's curious. It's a curious situation, but I do like the idea that this roster is set up for kids to battle for spots. It's not that prototypical. You got Kevin Hayes, you got all these guys that are pretty much penciled in to these spots, and you only have a couple spots. Whereas I think this roster is a little more set up for, if you do slip, you can take a seat, and we're going to insert player A, player B, player C, and we're going to find out what works.
And it's going to be a young guy that might have some promise, as opposed to, just a Band-Aid veteran, which is what they is lather, rinse, repeat over the last several years. But I think the two questions that come to mind for me are, what are they going to get from the veterans, Couturier and Atkinson, and how is that going to affect them? In other words, the better they do, the further away you're getting from your goal of getting a higher pick. So it's kind of like you're straddling that fence. You want the cultural benefits of seeing pros out there doing it Torts' way, or just the right way, whatever that is, to take a line from Larry Brown, the ex-basketball coach. But also the other question that comes to mind is, which veterans are they going to hang on to, and which ones are they going to trade? And guys like Konechny come to mind, depending on what happens with the investigation that none of us want to talk about anymore, Carter Hart, and maybe some other players like Scott Lawton. I mean, this is where the intrigue is for me, is like, how do they pull all these strings to their maximum benefit for not just now, but going forward, where they're really looking, to make their big moves like 2-3 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. You're kind of right now, the Flyers are in that situation where you have a couple of high-priced veterans in Couturier and Atkinson that are still there. Good, they still have some term on their contracts. And how they perform is going to obviously have some effect on where you are in the standings. Though again, I mean, I wouldn't get too hung up on, oh, this is going to affect where we're going to be or
Yeah,
what
it's
kind
like
of
3-4
first round pick.
max.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the top 10, you're going to get it. Odds are you're going to get a really good pick. So, and hey, you got Michkov this time around too. So, hey, it's not like you don't have anything there worthwhile. And you have some young guys already on your roster. So, yeah, I mean, right now, as I said earlier, it's just about further evaluation of what you got, because last season wasn't really an evaluation other than this team sucks, but it wasn't really a fair evaluation of what was going on, though.
And management sucks. I think that was
I think that's what it was. It was more.
I agree to an extent, but halfway through last year, I think it was flat out an evaluation, which is why you've seen players like Kevin Hayes get cut. Essentially, you cut him for what you got back. That was a get off my team. I don't want you here. You don't try hard half the time. You skate. You know what I mean? So I think I agree to an extent. It wasn't an evaluation in the beginning. By the end, it was a flat out evaluation, and we're getting rid of the dead weight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once Briere came in, yeah. I mean, after Fletcher was gone, the evaluation, such as it was, began. But it wasn't a full season, and that's what you're going to get this time around. And yeah, this is where you're going to get a much better idea of which veterans are going to be still worth keeping around. Which of some of your younger guys like Konechny, whether he's whether he wants to stay, whether he, sees his future still with Philadelphia, because I mean, his name surfaces in rumors quite a bit, and it has since the middle of last season. I mean, it did beforehand when he was struggling, but then he regained his form under Tortorella last season, but his name still kept coming up, and it still floated to the surface this summer. So, that's going to be I think one of the main storylines for the Flyers going forward this season is where does Konechny fit into their future, and does he want to stay? Of course, he could answer that question for you guys by next summer when it becomes eligible to sign a contract extension. And he could be one of those guys that, not every one of these guys want to pull the pin and take off to free agency and go to greener pastures. Some guys are like, look, no, I think we've got something we can build here, and I want to stay and be part of it. So if he's of that mindset, he could definitely be a worthwhile guy to keep around.
Yeah,
especially with the salary cap going up.
Yeah,
I think, as you alluded to earlier too, this is a very important season for somebody like Sean Couturier. If he doesn't come back, it's going to really handcuff the Flyers in terms of that long-term contract's not going to be able to be moved. If he does come back and have a even 70% Sean Couturier a year, you could be looking to potentially move that contract next offseason.
You could. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You could. I mean, it would be difficult to move even if he's not at his full best. But, we've seen it before where teams have been able to move contracts of guys you think, oh, no way, they're going to be able to do that, because it is somebody like Couturier who has a very solid reputation as a two-way player who brings it in the playoffs. And that's the key thing. If you're bringing this guy in, it's not going to be so much of, well, what's he going to do for us during the regular season? Is he going to be that Coots the Beast, in the postseason like he was in the past? So if, there is that possibility there as well. But Atkinson, again, he's another one. And this is the other thing too. I mean, those guys are both in their 30s now. I think Couturier is in early 30s and Atkinson is more in his mid 30s by now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where it's a little bit difficult having kind of aging veterans with big contracts at this stage where the team is. But yeah, that's, I mean, with these guys and with Konechny and with the kids, I mean, you got a lot of different plots and subplots here that is going to require a full season to sort out for the Flyers.
Yeah, Lyle, before we let you go, I just wanted to get your comments about the Erik Karlsson trade and what your general feeling. And it's a big deal. I got to congratulate Kyle Dubas. If he's going to do this dubious thing, he did it well. If you're in the belief that the Penguins want to try and salvage whatever you can out of the Crosby, Malkin, Letang years and add EK in this big 3-team trade, what's your general impressions about the deal and what it portends?
Well, right off the bat, I think for better or for worse, This deal is going to define Kyle Dubas's tenure with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, right off the bat, you swing the biggest trade in terms of assets in Penguins history. I mean, 12 assets on the move, between three teams. In the short term, yes, they win the trade in the short term because they got the best player in the deal. You got the guy who's the defending Norris Trophy, winner. A guy who is going to go to a team with teammates that can help him at least maintain a 70, 80 points. Maybe he could have another 100-point season. I don't know. But, if he can give them 70 to 80 points a season for the next 2 to 3 years, he's got 4 more years left on his contract. I won't say that it'll push them into being Stanley Cup contenders. I just don't see that, given the age of guys like Crosby and Malkin and Letang, and of course Karlsson now being 33. But he can certainly help them be back and being a playoff contender again. And what they say, if you can make the playoffs, hey, anything can happen. So there is that possibility. In the long term, I think this deal, I mean, it's not going to help them out prospect wise for the future, long term future. Let's be honest. This is definitely the win now deal. For the Sharks, I'll say they made out better with this than their critics give them credit for. They caught a lot of stick. A lot of evaluations said, "Oh, they lost the trade. They lost it." Yeah, they lost the trade because they couldn't move Erik Karlsson to any other teams other than the Penguins and maybe the Hurricanes. They were the only two that were really interested because the salary cap stayed flattened. If he had that big season next season with the cap going up by at least $4 million, I think you would have seen a lot more teams interested in him, and ergo the Sharks would have gotten a better return than what they got. But they managed to clear all but $1.5 million of his cap hit off their books for the next 4 years. That ain't nothing. You managed to get that big chunk of salary gone. That's going to help them going forward as they retool. They don't like to say they're rebuilding in San Jose, so they will help their retooling. But they also get themselves a first-round pick. Yes, it's top 10 protected, blah, blah, blah. I think it's fair to say that the Penguins are not going to fall into that category, so we won't see that pick slide forward to 2025. I think that's going to be going to the Sharks, and that will help them in their rebuild. Now, whether that pick's in the middle of the pack or down below, who cares? The way I see it, most draft picks are a crapshoot anyway. That could be something that pans out. So they did a little bit better than what they did. The Montreal Canadiens were the ones I think that surprised a lot of people by jumping into this. And I'm not saying this because, yes, I'm a Habs fan, but that was a tidy piece of business by Ken Hughes, the Habs general manager, because he managed to get rid of Mike Hoffman in his contract. That was a player that he inherited that he really didn't want to have anymore on the roster. Yes, he bring back Jeff Petrie in the deal, but that's a guy now, because the Penguins retain some of his salary. You could retain half of that remaining salary and ship him out to another team before the start of the season and maybe get yourself a good young player out of it. Just several other things that went on there. So, I mean, overall, I was impressed by how intricate it was. It was a lot of moving parts with, players going from one team to another, how they managed to make that work. But definitely it was definitely the biggest trade of the summer, probably the biggest trade of the year. But as I said, short term, it could work out for the Penguins. Long term, probably not.
Got it. Lyle, thanks so much, man. People can find you at spectorshockey.net. Anywhere else?
Spectorshockey.net, yes. As I said, The Guardian here in Prince Edward Island. Also, Bleacher Report, The Hockey News. And if you read German, I also have a weekly column in Ice Hockey News in Germany. So there you are.
Jawohl. All right.
Danke.
Lyle, thanks again, man.
My pleasure, guys.
You take care. All right, man. You heard the man. That was fun. That was good to get Lyle on and finish that up, even though you didn't go through the 31 other teams. It was a lot. But hey, let's do a rewind here and just let you know that we're going to take care of some housekeeping now. Then we're going to finish up with a couple different bullet point topics I think you'll be interested in. The Philadelphia Flyers. Let me see. They start training camp about the third week of September. The first exhibition game is on September 25th versus New Jersey. I think the NHL opening night is Tuesday the 10th. I think the Flyers open up, what is that, on the 11th or 12th? I'm looking that up right now as we speak. They open up for good on the 12th in Columbus. So listen, it's not that far away. It's been a quick August, but the O&B Puckcast, you can find us on Twitter at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. We have a backup platform called Getter at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. And of course, if you could follow us on one of 12 podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon, Google, YouTube. We have a YouTube page. Just plug in there, O&B Puckcast. Will come right up. We have a Facebook page. If you could follow us, it really helps us move up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast. So let me tell you, your support has just been fantastic. We really do appreciate it. And right now, if you do a review on Apple Podcast for the O&B Puckcast, just go to Apple and do a review. Do it. Give us a screenshot, okay? And direct message us on Twitter or Getter. You'll be entered to win a promo package from DobbersHockey.com. It's the ultimate fantasy package. And it's not just fantasy. Okay. It's got all kinds of prospect stuff in there. It's got projections for the season. And it's even for the non-fantasy fan, you'll really appreciate it. So check it out, DobbersHockey.com, and give us a review. Screenshot it, get us over to us. And you'll really like this package. It's a download and they update during the season if you do play fantasy hockey. So with that, Kyle, what's your thought on this Massimo Rizzo pursuit and finally catching up with this player, getting a 5th-round draft pick, letting go of David Kasha, who had no future here? I mean, we're not talking about a great player, but he's a smallish guy, but he is skilled, not a great skater, and that's kind of what's really pushed him down, in the Carolina depth chart. So what say you?
Not a great skater, but he's still I still have him decently up on the Flyers now that we have them. He's not the lowest of the low as far as my prospects are concerned. He puts up decent points at the college number. I would again, just like a lot of players that we end up drafting or end up picking up, I would like to see him improve his skating a lot. But I don't. It's a win-win. You're trying to rebuild. So you're trying to add players that potentially could become something here, if not be packaged in a trade to acquire more assets. I think the deal's good. I like Rizzo personally. I like his poise with the puck. I like his hockey IQ. His passing's legit. I have no quarrels with the trade. Well, it wasn't that trade, but that was all stemming from the Tony DeAngelo thing.
Right.
The debacle with Tony DeAngelo. But I think all in all, I'm not hurt by it. I like adding another prospect to the depth over David Kasha, who is
you're a European player, right? And the thing about Rizzo is that he has this connection at University of Denver with Bobby Brink. So there's, some, if not kinship, some synergy maybe perhaps from their relationship. And it gives him a little encouragement because it's pretty clear he wasn't going to sign with Carolina, and that kind of spurred things along from the Carolina perspective. So at the worst, he's an AHL depth player. Instead of having to sign a whole bunch of veterans every year, and it's good to have your people, and if he becomes that guy instead of the NHL contributor, that's not such a bad thing at that cost anyway, right?
I also like the idea that you keep his rights for another year, and he can return to college, and he can improve on some things that we want him to improve on, like target-wise, like his skating, for example. We've already mentioned it multiple times, but I like the idea that you can go back to college, and then when you're done, you can sign your ELC with us. You know what I mean? We're not rushing you out of college, whereas Carolina wanted to sign him and get him out of college. He didn't want to get out of college. So I'm perfectly okay with it. I think it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, he's going back for his junior year, and so we'll keep an eye on him. And we're really going to be watching Michkov over in the KHL, and of course, Gauthier. But another player, and yes, we will get to Fedotov. I don't know. I mean, that's Rubik's Cube, what that's going to happen there. Alex Bump, who left Vermont after the coach there, Todd Woodcroft, allegedly was sharing inappropriate text with a student. Allegedly, I don't know anything. Well, he's going to Western Michigan, where I think Keith Jones went there. Yeah, so I don't know if he got steered there by the Flyers management, but he's an interesting kid who's got some upside, maybe a little bit more than a lot of people think. It's, again, what was like a 5th round pick or something like that.
Yeah.
So nothing to lose there. So he's an interesting offensive player who has to round out his game, and he can be really a tough guy to play against too. So he's physical, he arrives in ill humor, as they used to say. So he's another guy we could be talking about in the future.
Yeah, no, I like his size. I like the way he possesses and protects the puck. I think like you alluded to, he needs to work on things, but who at that age doesn't? And I personally, if you're playing for this college or that college or the other college, as long as you have room to play and improve, I'm perfectly okay with wherever you are.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's another one of those players we'll be looking at. And of course, I read something interesting in the Dobber Hockey. We were referring to our buddies over there who are offering this promo that we're carrying. And they had gone through a review of his season, and they were saying they thought he was overdrafted from the perspective of 2022. Now, they're saying that his performance last year changed their mind. And according to the Daily Face-Off, they call Gauthier a quality player putting a beating on his age group. So that's not a bad thing. And he'll be playing with a lot of those guys from the U.S. NDP development program. Will Smith, who's the other kid they're going to be playing with? Is a whole line going there? No, Cooley signed in Arizona. Thinking of the WJC. Who's the other kid that the Rangers got with the late in the first round? Really skilled player, and needs to work on his skating. He was the other player on that line with Smith and Gauthier. And a name
I can't. It's eluding me now that you're like jogging my memory. My brain's like, nope, we're not giving it to you.
Yeah, so he'll be in BC as well. And so yeah, it's really going to be interesting to watch. So if you get ESPN Plus, if not for NHL, you also have college hockey there too. So, and of course, we're frantically looking this up because we got it. We're hockey fans. We want to give it to you. So I'm just looking up the draft from last year to get this name for you, because I think the Rangers took him late in the first round. A lot of people thought it was a steal for them. And his name is Gabriel Perreault. So he'll be in BC as well. So, okay. Ivan Fedotov, the IIHF makes a ruling that we've been talking about whether the Flyers had an enforceable deal. The last time we heard something like that, I was thinking, oh, Eric Lindros. But this isn't Todd Bertuzzi's uncle. This is an International Ice Hockey Federation, and they said the Flyers had an enforceable deal, and they also said that Fedotov couldn't play the first 4 months because he should have let them know what he had planned to do. But as if Fedotov didn't have a gun to his head, brother. Come with us to Siberia or, to Army training camp. He hardly played for a year. So I guess the upshot of all of it is we're not really sure how things are going to work out. The KHL and the club themselves are going to appeal and make a big stink. For me, it's like, look, he hasn't played in a year anyway. Even if he just got on a plane right here, right now, he couldn't play up above the AHL level as it stands. And the Flyers are really crowded in net. It's a shame that he wasn't over last year and get that exposure in North America, but it is what it is. And the Flyers have a lot of depth, not only in the short term, medium, and long as well. What about you?
I'm so tired of talking about Ivan Fedotov. It's heartbreaking The whole situation was heartbreaking. He should have been here last year. The Flyers pretty much paved the way for him to have a backup role here last year, and it all fell apart. So now they signed Sam Ersson. They have Sandstrom. They got Cal Peterson now. It is a disaster, and I'm going to be honest here, and this is just my personal opinion. I am going to play as friendly as humanly possible with the KHL right now because of my 7th overall draft pick from this year. So I'm gonna let him stay personally, just so I have a good relationship with the KHL.
Now, I hear you. I think each situation. Don't forget, we have Kolosov, one of the hottest prospects, young goalies going forward. And that's a kid that could be maybe ready in like 2 years to come over in North America. He's playing in what's it, Dynamo Minsk.
Yep.
So I think each situation could end up being different, but I hear you, because on one hand, if you roll over for them, they're not going to respect you. If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So you have to have a line in the sand. And I think that's what's behind the Flyers challenging it the way they did. But you don't want to push it too far, because I think, again, you're straddling that fence with these other players that are going to end up being more important. Obviously, Michkov, Kolosov, and possibly one of the Russian players, Demidov, or one of the Russian defensemen. One of them's here. One of them's in, I think, in the USHL, or is going to be in college this year. I forgot the guy. Scott Wheeler just had a really nice article about, his prospects for 24. But there's going to be a couple of different Russian players. So you have to kind of be forward-looking and prioritize Fedotov, as you said. Look with an eye toward the future. Be strategic in what you're going to battle for.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to ruin relationships over a player that we don't even technically have room for right this very second. Where does he slot in? We literally do not have a spot for him. So
if you wanted to, let's be honest. Cal Peterson was more or less a salary dump. He might play better in the future, but maybe his best days are behind him. And I don't think, we could put him anywhere we want, because no one's going to pay his salary, right? And also, Sandstrom is not highly valued by the organization. And of course, Carter Hart could go bye-bye real fast. I don't want to, dwell on that either. That's like the Fedotov thing on the other side of the coin. One guy's a victim, the other guy maybe not. I don't know. So it's a soap opera, man. It's a damn soap opera.
It is. I'll tell you what, the last 10 years or 5 years or so of Flyers has been an absolute opera and soap opera. I feel like I'm with my grandmom again, watching the old school soap operas on in the afternoon, because I was staying home sick from school.
As the Flyers turn, right? So, all right, man. I think we're going to wrap it right there. I'm going to give you an opportunity to have the last word. And of course, you can give us your social media contacts and what else you got going on.
Yeah, I don't really have much going on. You guys can all find me on Twitter at WarnerKyle29. You want to give me a follow? I will be sure to look into following you back. And talking hockey. I love talking hockey on Twitter. So if you guys want to reach out, ask questions, or just have a conversation, I'm always down.
Yep. And of course, you got the Flyers Alley Pod. You're cooking with those two guys. That's great. Fantastic. Check those guys out at Flyers Alley Pod 1 on Twitter. I got that right?
Yes.
Excellent. You can follow me, Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. Isaiah, don't forget that _520. You'll have a mix of opinions about medicine, music, a little sports. Yeah, I'm a big boxing fan. And if you don't like me, don't take it out on the podcast. Yeah, just meet me if you don't like it. Hey, I'm in my 60s now, so I've earned a level of respect. Oh, I hate saying that. Man, that went by fast. Anyway, you can follow the O&B Puckcast at O&B Puck at O&B Puck. The storylines continue for the Philadelphia Flyers, and we'll be right on top of all of them. So until next time, everybody, take care.